Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Chair. How are you, Chair?
All is well this morning. And how are you, Mr. Nodada?
Oh, I'm good, except that Cape Town is freezing today, Chair.
Very cold, very cold.
Yeah, it is. Yes,
Okay,
Chairperson.
I will be joining you shortly. We'll start the meeting at 10 o'clock.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. Good morning, Mavaus.
Greetings, Mr. Nadada. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself, sir?
I'm okay, thank you.
We have been speaking for a while now. I can't put the face to your name. Can you please show your face?
Apologies,
Oh,
the situation. Yeah.
great, great. Nice to
Uh,
see you, brah.
likewise, and thank you for your assistance thus far.
Thanks, bot. Thank you. But hey,
Uh,
your your presentation, because you have got a few pictures. In fact, I did not even send the video to members because it refused to go through. So I decided to send all the other documents. But I've been having a lot of issues because the size due to pictures and all the stuff. But I hope we're going to be good because I decided to now send all the documents starting yesterday, one by one, in different batches to members. Otherwise, it has nothing to do with you, but it's just that I did not foresee a situation whereby like emails and the link would bounce due to the attachments.
okay, I see. No, not a problem. Thanks, I understand. Would it help if I can send to you in a PDF format? It's just then the video won't play. But if you wanted to circulate it to members, then it'll be a smaller file size.
I even tried to convert, especially the presentation, into PDF. I also tried to compress everything into a zip file, but still I failed.
Oh
So
dear.
hence I
Okay.
decided to just adopt a strategy of sending them like one by one to members.
Okay. No,
Mm.
thank you so much for that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, thanks, but it's okay. See you later then.
Cheers.
Good morning, House Chairperson.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, members on the platform. It's few seconds before 10 o'clock. Mr. Nodada, can you kindly confirm if all the invitees to this meeting, including members, are on the platform to allow us to start with the meeting?
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning, honorable members. Yes, Chairperson, all the guests are on the platform, and honorable members, except two, Honorable Swart and Honorable Ndlovu, are yet to join, Chairperson. Thank you.
Mr. Brett, I see you have your hand up before we could even begin with the meeting.
Yes, good morning, Honorable Chair and all the colleagues and all the invitees. The Honorable Swart is going to join us later. He has a problem with his vehicle at the moment. He's trying to sort it out and then he will join us.
Noted, thank you. In the future, members, I'm going to request that any apologies or submissions pertaining the attendance of members be forwarded straight to Mr. Nodada for recording, as there's an item on the apologies that he needs to note, and that can be really appreciated, members. Members, it's exactly 10 o'clock. Let me formally open the meeting by acknowledging the presence of all committee members that are present in this meeting, esteemed representatives from COSATU, Equal Education and Education Law Center, our dedicated support staff, esteemed guests from the public, and the stakeholders gathered here today. It is truly my honor to welcome each and every one of you to this important gathering. Today's meeting holds significant importance as we gather here to engage with civil society organizations to seek their valuable perspectives on the bill at hand. We all know that we are busy with the Appropriations Bill. As we convene in accordance with the provisions of our Constitution, particularly Section 72, It is our duty to ensure that the public participation is not only conducted, members, but it is conducted meaningfully during this legislative process. Over the past few days, we have diligently met with key entities such as the National Treasury, the FFC, and the Parliamentary Budget Office to gather insight and perspectives. Today marks the final engagement before we move forward to consider and ultimately adopt the comprehensive report. Before we proceed, I am going to request that members open their videos, make introductions one by one in the following order. Mr. Ryder will be the first, Mr. Brett will be the second, Ms. Siwesa will be the third, Honorable Numalo will be the fourth, and Honorable Ndlovu will be the last. Mr. Ryder, kindly open the video and introduce yourself. Mr. Brett, kindly a formal introduction so that we familiarize ourselves with all the colleagues and guests on the platform.
Good morning, colleagues. I'm Henny Brits. I'm a permanent delegate from the Eastern Cape in the NCOP. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Brett. Ms. Siwisa, I'm sorry, I usually pronounce your surname wrongly, but I'll get used to pronouncing it correctly next time. Honorable Siwisa.
Noted, Chair. Good morning, colleagues and representatives from COSATU. This is Honorable Matapelo Siwisa, permanent delegate from Northern Cape, also representing the economic freedom fighters. Thank you.
Honorable Ndlovu.
Good morning, Chair.
Kindly switch on your videos for all the members on the platform to see you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Honorable Sanin Zofu, permanent delegate from Limpopo. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ndlovu. Honorable Ngumalo.
No, thank you very much, Chair. My humble greetings to you. Mpumalanga, permanent from the.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngumalo. Maybe for the benefit of the committee members, the member that have just introduced herself is Honorable Sylvia Ngumalo, a permanent delegate from Mpumalanga. I'm going to request that, Honorable Ngumalo, you try and find a spot where you can have a clear coverage of the network. Members could hardly hear a thing of what you're saying. I was earlier on told that there will be a member from the Northern Cape representing the FF Plus that will be joining a meeting. I can't clearly see the name on the platform. If the member is available or present, can you kindly open the video and introduce yourself? Mr. Nodada is the member on the platform.
No, Chairperson, Honorable Van der Beck is not on the platform yet, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nodada. Colleagues on the platform, now that members have introduced themselves, I'm going to request that the representatives, firstly from COSATU, then Equal Education, and then Equal Education Law Center, also introduce their representatives or the teams that they have brought to the meeting. Thank you very much. COSATU.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. My name is Matthew Parks from the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, and we look forward to working with members over this term. And we want to welcome you. And we've got lots of work to do over the next 5 years. Thanks, members, and thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Equal education.
Greetings, Chair. Greetings, members. It's an honor to be here. And likewise, I welcome you to the new term. My name is Mahfouz Rafi. I'm from Equal Education. Our presentation was developed in collaboration with the Equal Education Law Center, but unfortunately, they do not have a representative present here today. For those who are unfamiliar, Equal Education is a mass-based movement of school youth primarily, as well as some post-school youth, parents, and community members, teachers, fighting for equality and quality as well in the education sector, most especially in the basic education sector. And Equal Education's Law Center is a public interest law center, specializing in education rights. And likewise, looking forward to working with this community, with this committee. The learners expressed to us very much the importance of effective oversight over public services to improve state capacity in the education sector. It's very much needed. So thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Your contribution and insights will be of great value to our discussions, and we appreciate your presence here today. Thank you all members, invitees, guests, public, and our staff for being here and for being part of this crucial dialogue. I alone am looking forward to a very productive and enriching session ahead. Without any waste of time, I am going to give to COSATU first to make a presentation and maybe clarify that there will not be separate presentations from both Equal Education and Equal Education Law Center. Their presentation will be combined and it will be one presentation to all the members. We must not expect 3 presentations. So for today, we'll have only 2 presentations, and we're going to allow presenters to make their presentations, and likewise the deliberations to both the presentations will be taken afterwards. Thank you very much, colleagues. Over to you, COSATU.
Okay. Thanks, Chen. Good morning, members and colleagues. Yes, thanks for giving space to us just to share our views on the appropriation bill. I think for us it is quite a critical issue. One does appreciate this is the first time that the new committee is engaged with the budget, and it is a bit of a leftover of the outgoing administration's budget. But nonetheless, there are important issues we felt do need to be raised. I think, Chef, for us, we do recognize there are positive parts of the bill, of the budget, but I think also we do think there are missed opportunities too as well, and some fundamental areas of disagreement we have as COSATU with Treasury. I think philosophically, we believe the budgets need to respond much more decisively to the challenges facing workers, working class communities, the families, the economy, businesses, and the state at large. I think where we disagree fundamentally with Treasury on issues of budget cycles is that the growth in the debt, we believe, is a symptom. It's not a cause of the economic challenges. And the solution is to address the economic challenges and not simply to pursue quite a conservative stance that just simply think we can just cut expenditure and somehow expect things to turn around. I think for us as COSATU and affiliates, the solution really is about how do we grow the economy, how do we reduce unemployment, provide relief to the poor and the unemployed, and also how do we rebuild the state and its capacity to provide the public services that society, communities, businesses depend upon, and equally also how do we tackle crime and corruption, rebuild local government, etc. I think, Chad, if we address these issues, this is how we believe we'll actually grow the economy, because of what we've seen over the years is that we've been stuck at a growth rate of 1.3%, 1.8% over the medium-term expenditure framework. And if we continue along that growth rate, we're not going to get out of this crisis. We've got to make sure that we grow the economy substantially. Of course, members would be correct to ask, well, where would you get this kind of money, funds from to fund these public services, etc. And we think there are different opportunities. We do want to welcome, and the bill has been passed, the GFRECA Act, which allowed government to tap into about 150 billion rand from the South African Reserve Bank reserves to try to ease the fiscal pressures. We had hoped that could have been spent on boosting Transnet and Eskom because that have a multiplier effect on the economy, but nonetheless, it does give some relief, albeit of a temporary nature, to the fiscus. Chair, we think that there's a critical work that's been done by the South African Revenue Service, and we've seen the real value of investing in public services, by appointing competent management, filling critical vacancies, investing in the capacity of SARS. We've seen a real increase in tax compliance. There's been a growth from about 61 to 64%, and that's about an additional 60 billion rand in tax revenues for the state. We think, Chair, that, and we do welcome the additional 1 billion rand given to SARS, but we think we should actually give them much more, ideally about 10 billion rand, just to further boost tax compliance on their part. We do think, Chair, that, and we recognize you can't, forever increase taxes, but we think there were some further gaps to see how to make sure the wealthy pay their fair share. We could have looked at simply around wealth taxes, large corporation, luxury imports, etc. And at the same time, we were a bit disappointed that they didn't adjust the tax bands for the lower income groups, the 3 lower income bands. But we do think there is a welcome 4 billion rand of fuel levy relief, which has given some breathing space to commuters. And of course, the president himself made the commitment in the OPA address about reviewing the fuel tax levies, and taxes which consume about a third of the fuel price regime. Chair, proposal really on this revenue front was that, well, we felt that we should have looked at the 150 billion rand from the Reserve Bank to actually boost Eskom and Transnet because they've got huge debt burdens. And again, if you can free up reserves on their front, that has a huge impact immediately upon industry, businesses, commuters, the economy at large, and of course, it generates taxes back to the state. We really had hoped to see a significant increase in the reserve, the budget for SARS. Again, and that should be simply a blank, without conditions. But we should have had an arrangement with SARS that how can we increase tax compliance from 64 to 70% in the next 2 years. An additional 6% tax compliance by SARS, and that's just for compliance with the existing taxes like customs duties, etc. That could have generated an additional about 120 billion rand for the state. And again, that's going to make a huge difference in terms of the deficit, funding public services, filling vacancies, again, which has a multiplier effect upon the quality of public services. And again, that benefits workers, society, businesses, the economy at large. We do think, Chair, there's a need for this administration, this parliament, to really deal with the issue of the road accident fund, which consumes about 3 rand a litre of the petrol price, is perpetually in chaos, has about 400 billion rand of the liabilities. It has become in effect a feeding frenzy for road accident lawyers, and actually the money should actually be directed to its claimants, especially to the poor, to working class claimants in particular. But the point is, Chair, that the RAF is in a mess, and we do think it needs to be placed in administration, and we should be finding a way to set it on the right path. And I think key to that is for the Department of Transport to retable the road accident fund and the road accident benefit schemes bills, which will really make sure that its funds go towards low-income claimants, not to wealthy persons, not to lawyers, etc. Chair, on the issue of the state-owned enterprises, again, we want to grow the economy, to reduce retrenchments or to hold them, to create jobs, etc. The key to that is around the network and the logistic obstacles facing it. We think there's been real excellent progress by the 6th administration, and it's continuing now under the 7th administration to addressing Eskom's challenges. Elections have come and gone. We've had more than 100 days without load shedding. We think we are on the positive front. Obviously, we're not out of the woods yet, but we think Eskom is making significant progress. We should really think how can we kind of reinforce and support that progress. We do really support and welcome the 253 billion rand of debt relief which has been given to Eskom. We do think the conditions are slightly onerous and they should be reconsidered. And again, we also want to welcome the municipal debt relief as well, I think, which is about 83 billion rand, if memory serves me correctly. But obviously, we do need a conversation on the municipal debt front because you can't simply also allow debt to be written off forever and a day. That's not sustainable, and it's also unfair to those who do pay the debt. And equally, it's going to put Eskom into a crisis if we don't fundamentally resolve it. Part of it is about simply for all consumers of Eskom products to be moved towards prepaid. And sometimes there's a misnomer which says it's poor communities who are not on prepaid, which is not true. It tends to be by municipality. We've seen many departments, SOEs, municipalities, companies themselves, even large wealthy companies like hotels, actually owing Eskom billions of rands. So it's not just a question of working class indigenous communities who can be assisted through the Indigenous Household Grant, but actually those who can afford to pay, so not doing so as well. Chair, whilst one recognizes the huge progress made by Eskom, the real threat right now has been for the past year the issue of Transnet. We have seen some positive progress, I think, since around January, February this year, in terms of addressing the port congestion at Transnet. But it still remains severely under pressure. And one can see, the stats at the beginning of this year, that Transnet basically is transporting less goods today than it did in 1994. So there's a real need to give Transnet additional support. We do hope the 47 billion rand loan guarantee is going to make that difference, but it does remain extremely fragile. And Transnet is so critical, Chair. You could see during the medium-term budget policy statement that we had about a shortfall in revenue collection of about 56 billion rand, and that was largely because of Transnet. The inability of it to transport mining, manufacturing, agricultural goods to the destinations. And again, if you're talking about the rising cost of living, you want to see a fully operational Transnet to help protect food from inflation. And also, Chair, if you want to look at the revenue of company taxes to the state, the mining industry is a huge pay of those. And so we need to see Transnet being fully operational, and that means that we must give them additional support like was given to Eskom, etc. We have been disappointed not to see really clear, decisive support of similar measures being given to other SOEs, whether it's Metro Rail or the Post Office, where about 6,000 workers have been retrenched, the Post Bank, Denel, SABC, and all of these were once world-class institutions. They've gone through very painful years of state capture, corruption, poor management, structural shifts, underinvestment in infrastructure. But if assisted, like SARS, for example, or Eskom, they can turn around. There is I think, some progress at Metro Rail, at least to reopen all the lines. We hope that can be done by the end of December this year. But again, if you look at Metro Rail Chair members, the number of passenger numbers using it has fallen by about 90% over the past decade. Because of COVID, because of cable theft, signaling disruptions, of crime on the trains itself, etc. So there is a need for a real dedicated approach to it. But if you can get commuters back onto train carriages, if Metro Rail is fully operational, one that saves workers and commuters a huge amount of money because it's quite cheap compared to taxis and buses. It eases congestion, which we see is picking up in urban centers, but also helps to boost workplace productivity, the urban economy, etc. But it's got to come with some sort of holistic interventions. So I think our proposal on the SOE front really is about how do we give additional support to Eskom, including easing its debt relief conditions, what has to give permission to invest in new generation capacity, getting additional support from law enforcement to it, to tackle crime and corruption. I think the new CEO has been doing quite well. There is very critical commitments in the OPA and the SONA about investing in 14,000 kilometers of new transmission lines. I think 170 new transmission capacity as well. And that's going to really be a game changer. And again, we need to see similar support to Transnet on the issue of debt, of law enforcement, the issue of competent persons, reviving rural railway lines, etc. And of course, we'd hope to see similar packages to the other SOEs, especially Metro Rail. So there's a very progressive 943 billion rand infrastructure program over the MTEF period, especially around water. I think about a third of that is around water, others is obviously around roads and so forth. But Chair, we're not going to be able to spend that money if we don't fix local government. And we've seen over the past few years, past decades, that the stats around local government are quite alarming. About a decade ago, you had about 10% of municipalities in financial distress to varying degrees. A few years ago, that has increased to about almost 200 out of the 259 municipalities, roughly, give or take. We've seen also in terms of the ability to pay staff. A few years ago, it was about 20 municipalities who routinely failed to pay staff. That's in the past 2 years increased to about 36 municipalities. And they tend to be concentrated in the Free States, the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and Northwest, and a few in Gauteng and Limpopo. But largely in those kind of the four central provinces. And again, if you look at when you get to the medium-term budget policy statement, you'll see those same municipalities struggling to spend the infrastructure grants, etc. You'll see the same municipality where municipal services deterred to the point of collapse, and companies then often just simply close shop or retrench, etc. So we are hoping the 140 municipalities targeted for capacitation programs will make a difference. And again, you also need to see the capacitation of SOEs, especially Eskom and Transit and Metro, where huge chunks of the infrastructure allocation are accorded. So proposals here really shares to see, especially for the NCP members, given the role they play with regards to provincial local government, a much stricter approach to oversight around the infrastructure program. Chair, then in terms of the relief to the poor and to working class communities, with all of his issues, the SRD grant has been a major lifeline to about 8 million persons who receive it. We have been disappointed that since it was introduced in 2020, it is only this year for the first time that it's been adjusted for inflation. We really think that with each budget, we should be adjusting for inflation. The presidential employment stimulus, again, has been a wonderful opportunity. It's accommodated about 500,000 teaching assistants. Yet it's been cut with each budget cycle from a peak of about 36 billion rand to currently less than 9 billion rand. And we think that's a tragedy when we're talking about 42% unemployment. Unemployment has actually been increasing in the past, I think, 3 employment reports. And you're talking about a 59% youth employment rate. So the presidential stimulus, Chair, we think is wonderful because one, it pays minimum wage, so we avoid that fight. But more critically, it links people to actual experience, to skills opportunities. It gives them the kind of a confidence that they will need to find permanent employment. So we really hope to see in the medium-term budget statement that the presidential employment program could be significantly increased to accommodate at least 2 million persons. We have made a lot of progress, Chair, around the 2-part pension reforms with the 6th Parliament. The President signed on, I think, was it Sunday or Monday, rather, the final part of the 2-part pension reform. So that's now hopefully on track to be implemented on 1 September, which will give relief to literally millions of workers. So proposals here, Chair, really around relief to the poor and to working class communities. We should be in the budget cycles adjusting SRD grant for inflation at least, but ideally, because it's a key component of the 7th administration's targets, to be raising to the food poverty line, and to also to be using as a foundation for some sort of a basic income grant. We would hope to see in the in the November NTVPS that the presidential employment stimulus should also be adjusted to accommodate at least 2 million unemployed persons continuously, and of course to make sure that that we do implement the 2-part pension reforms on 1 September. And there is some significant work that needs to be done. But we are having weekly meetings as COSATU with Treasury, with the pension fund industry and government to make sure the 2-part reforms does happen smoothly on 1 September. So just getting towards the end, so I don't want to run out of time. In terms of some of the departments, often there's an issue about the wage bills out of control. In fact, we've seen a decline. It was stable at about 35% of the budget since 2008. It had increased in 2008 to accommodate additional skilled professionals like doctors, nurses, police officers, teachers, etc. We have seen the freeze of vacancies over the past 2 years is declined to, and also the wage freezes in some of the years, or the below inflation increases, is declined from 35 to 31%. So there's not a wage bill crisis. What we're seeing is a crisis of the We have seen the police headcount actually decrease from about 208,000 to about 172,000. Though we've seen the past 2 years' budgets, beginning to fill police vacancies. That's positive, but I think much more needs to be done quickly. And we really also kind of still remain quite concerned about vacancies of prosecutors in the courts, etc. We are concerned about below inflation increases for health, agriculture, defense, cuts to the CCMA, to Home Affairs, to Metro Rail, electrification, etc. But there have been some positive above inflation increases for schools, police, courts, housing, roads, water, infrastructure especially. And of course, we want to welcome under DTIC the R1 billion industrial financing increases, the tax incentive for electric vehicles, which we think can be a positive shift. There are some positive increases for agriculture, for the Letsima program for emerging farmers, under education for the ECD investments and infrastructure. But again, Chair, worry about the cut for the teaching assistants and the presidential promise stimulus. We are quite concerned, Chair, that you often find in human settlements, especially on informal settlement upgrades, cuts. And in the previous financial year, we actually had seen a 45% funding not being spent, which again, Chair, it's just to highlight, we allocate these funds, and then you can see by the MGBS significant under expenditure. We have been worried again around presidential promise has been cut for the neighborhood development partnership grants and the treasury. But there is a positive increase in smart electricity meters. And then, Chair, I think just lastly on it, we do welcome the commencement of the start of Parliament's reconstruction. We do think, Chair, that it would be, we would encourage Parliament, new members, to continue to take the committee work to a virtual platform, because it really does open up Parliament to the entire nation. So one can be sitting in Vembe and participate in committee meeting as a member of the public. Members of Parliament could be doing constituency work in Mpumalanga or KZN and still be participating in committee work. And we think it saves Parliament a huge amount of money as well. But also we've seen a real significant increase in productivity of Parliament too, when they move to committees being virtual. Of course, it might give the committee secretaries additional grey hairs and extra work, but I think it's been a huge boost to Parliament's role in the past term. I think, Chair, just in conclusion, we do hope that when you get to the medium-term budget policy statement in November, that government treasury tells a much more aggressive MTPS to really stimulate the economy and its growth, to boost job creation, to give relief to the poor and the unemployed, and to really capacitate the state to tackle crime and corruption. And of course, a much more aggressive approach by Parliament, and also by Cabinet too, around wasteful expenditure and so forth, and how we can really reinforce frontline services. But Chair, there are many good parts of the budget too, but when you look at the macro indicators of 1% economic growth, 42% unemployment, still struggling SOEs and entities, the high levels of crime and corruption. If you look at struggling public services like Home Affairs, we have to do much more. And I think, Chair, we'll be critical in this Parliament, given the challenge we face, and I think given the significant amount of political consensus about what needs to be done, that we need to see, a much greater scrutiny of Parliament, of government, about how it spends the money, etc. But we can't afford simply the rollovers, etc. So I think, Chair, let me stop there, and just to thank members. I might have gone slightly overboard in terms of time, but yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Before I allow Equal Education to make its presentation, there are 3 members that I omitted earlier when introductions were made. I'm going to request that Mr. Swartz, Mr. Majola, and Mr. Ryder quickly introduces themselves before I hand over to Equal Education. Mr. Ryder, Mr. Swartz, and Mr. Majola, and kindly open your videos when you do your introductions. Mr. Ryder.
Thank you very much. I do apologize for the earlier failure of mine to respond when I was called. You were on the meeting that preceded this one. I think you will understand the reasons why there were some subsequent phone calls. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dennis Ryder. I'm a permanent delegate from the Gauteng province. And many of you will remember me from the last 5 years, where I enjoyed the benefit of the inputs of many of the people that are currently online. So I thank you for that, and thank you for today's presentation, Father Parks and Father Matthew, sorry. And I look forward to many more similar engagements going forward. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Swart.
Good morning, Chair, Honourable Chair Lady. Good morning to everyone on the platform. My name is Paul Swart, permanent delegate on Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swart. Honorable Majola.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Greetings to colleagues from the Select Portfolio Committee, and good morning to two stakeholders, being COSATU and the Equal Education. My name is Mr. Majola, from the Permanent Delegate from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm looking forward to the informative presentation by two stakeholders. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Mr. Rafi, I would like to award you this opportunity to make your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair, honorable members. Greetings again. Please, I apologize if this takes a while, but let me know if all is in order and if I may begin the presentation.
You may continue, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Honorable members, I have introduced Equal Education and Equal Education Law Center. They are separate but sister organizations. I am a researcher at Equal Education, and here representing the primarily high school learners who form the vast majority of our 5,000 membership. We are located in, or organized in 5 provinces: Western Cape, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and the Eastern Cape. Apologies for that. And advocate for better and equal opportunities in the public education sector. Our learners, we call them equalizers, learner members, really find value in engaging with the committees and engaging with various spheres of government in the spirit of participatory democracy. We practice that through our organizational structures, as well as try to inculcate that spirit of civic participation more generally. So one of our learners, Katlego Sekaulela, she's from Limpopo. She has been elected to serve on our national council and has made a short presentation which she wanted the committee to be cognizant of. But you'll see that in our written submission as well, a range of different learners from Limpopo have addressed an open letter to various stakeholders in education that outline certain problems that they're facing more generally. However, this presentation in particular speaks to one item. So I'd just like to begin with this and hope you did indulge me. Thank you so much, honorable members.
Excuse me for that, Honorable Siwisa.
Yes, Chair, I don't know if we were supposed to only look at the slides or somebody was supposed to explain something. I'm not sure if I'm the only one who didn't hear anything or that's how it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Apologies for that, honorable members. There was audio together with the presentation. For the purpose of time, maybe I can resend the video and allow you guys to watch it with the narration.
Members, you can remember that it was said earlier on that there was a problem with loading of the video and some information, as Mr. Nodada had to redo some of the sending this morning. I think the video is part of that. And as the video was playing or the pictures were coming as slides on the presentations, I also thought the part of the presentation is just to show us the pictures, and Mr. Rafi will talk to the pictures after all the slides or summarize the intention of the pictures for the committee. Mr. Rafi, in that order, I'm going to request that you do not replay the video, rather talk to the videos or the slides that you've just put before the members, also to save time.
Sure. Apologies for that, Chair, and thank you, members, for your patience. So yes, that video did have an audio overlay of, as I mentioned, our learner member equalizer who was narrating through those slides, essentially speaking to the conditions faced by many learners in Limpopo province, in particular, learners at the four schools that were involved in those slides. But it's indicative of certain trends more generally. As you would have noticed, plain pit toilets are still prevalent in many of these schools. Many of these schools do not have adequate or sufficient water, don't have water supply on many days. And sanitation is a clear problem. And so it was basically outlining the conditions that learners must go to school in, unsafe, disease and illness is easily contagious in such conditions. On hot days, it's very difficult to concentrate in class because there is a lack of water and adequate sanitation in schools. And therefore an appeal to the committee to adequately fund or ensure that sanitation projects are adequately funded and carried out on time, so that learners can receive their constitutionally mandated right to basic education. And of course, there are various interrelated problems which the learners do speak to. That's not only around sanitation and infrastructure, but it intersects with these in the education system as well. If you look at some of the progress that has been made in recent years, it's been achingly slow, but progress has indeed been made. You'll see especially the number of schools with plain pit toilets is now, as of last year, less than 1,000, and there is quite a likelihood that this remaining 700 will hopefully be completed within the coming financial year. We urge that the committee conducts oversight to make sure that this is indeed completed. I think the Department of Basic Education initially set itself a deadline of 2013 and then 2016 to eradicate all schools who are reliant on plain pit latrines. Unfortunately, we are in 2024 and that is not the case yet, but we're hoping to come towards the end of that particular journey very soon. Unfortunately, at the same time, there are still several other pressing backlogs in school infrastructure and in sanitation infrastructure in particular. You'll see that as reporting standards develop and increase, the number of schools with insufficient sanitation has also been increasing, and that's a problem that has been identified, and more resources need to be committed to this. I'll speak to the School Infrastructure Backlogs Grant, which funds the CD program. This is a national program, and in-kind grant committed to provinces, where the National Department of Education, on behalf of provinces, helps to eradicate some of the most pressing infrastructure backlogs related to water, inappropriate structures, electricity, sanitation. If you look at inflation-adjusted figures since its inception, it's more or less always been decreasing. And the value now, both in real terms and in nominal terms, has very similar to what it was when it started, despite progress being a bit too slow for the targets that were set. We think that better oversight over how the grant is implemented and how it's structured would help to achieve better outcomes and increase the speed and the pace at which learners can go to school in dignified conditions. I'd like to express our dismay that in the medium-term framework, this grant did receive cuts, and I think that actually undermines some of the intentions of this administration and of previous governments as well. I'd like to just mention President Ramaphosa recently in the opening of Parliament address, when speaking to education in particular, and I'd like to quote, as a country, we need to appreciate the impact that a well-functioning and quality education system has on both reducing poverty and driving inclusive economic growth. We will ensure schools are conducive to education with enough classrooms, safe and appropriate sanitation facilities, clean water, and a daily meal for those who need it. And so unfortunately, what I'm speaking to in many of the presentations sort of contradicts in many ways what the president has said, because we've seen cuts to particular grants that are looking for that is sanitation, but also later move on to classrooms and overcrowding, and therefore undermines the idea of inclusive economic growth and the right to education that we want to achieve for all members of society. Another problem around infrastructure funding, as you may know, in the Appropriations bill, the education infrastructure grant has also funds have been reduced from there. And when we look into provinces and the plans for the current projects, actually, not just their plans, for eradicating infrastructure backlogs and providing schools with appropriate infrastructure necessary for education, they simply do not have the funds. And this is not just based on their need. This is based on projects that have already begun, that are implemented and in implementation plans and processes. This is just Eastern Cape. I think you might have seen in Limpopo earlier, there was a similar graph. The total cost of current plans in the Eastern Cape province comes to about 21 billion rand. But the amount spent previously and the amount committed to these projects is far less than that. And what this essentially means is that schools will not have adequate infrastructure and will, in all likelihood, not be able to provide dignified learning conditions to their learners. I want to stress that infrastructure provision is not only necessary for education, the right to education to be realized, but it's also in many cases a matter of dignity for the learners, and therefore is an essential component of public expenditure and of the social wage. If we look at a more national level, I'm just going to run through the slide, but these are projections by the Department of Basic Education about what it would cost to eradicate the pressing infrastructure backlogs within 7 years. We know that all of these items were actually by law and by the minimum uniform norms and standards and the timelines attached to it previously were meant to be eradicated by the year 2023. And then this plan essentially is looking to eradicate it within the next 7 years. It was presented to Parliament last year. So if we wanted to allow all schools to have infrastructure in line with the law by 2030, we'd, including maintenance, necessary maintenance costs, we'd have to invest on average about 40 billion rand per year. If you want to eradicate only the most pressing of infrastructure backlogs, that's sort of the ones that are highlighted, that would require an investment of 20 billion rand per year into school infrastructure. At the moment, school infrastructure in total is between 15 and 16 billion rand per year. So there is a significant underfunding of school infrastructure, and this impacts on children's rights to education. I'd also like to, and so our recommendations are to repeal the cuts that have been announced in the appropriations bill to the education infrastructure grant, to the school infrastructure backlogs grant, and to increase the value of these grants so that schools can achieve and attain the minimum uniform norms and standards required for school infrastructure, so as to conduct stringent oversight over the implementation of these grants. Noted yesterday, I'm in a meeting with the Parliamentary Budgetary Office, and I don't think there was time to go through it in most detail, but there was a document presented to the committee about the performance of various conditional grants to the education sector. I think advise the committee to take this up with both Treasury and the Department of Basic Education to find out ways in which the implementation of these grants can be improved, and the state achieves both more value for its money, but also ensuring that learners' rights to education through the provision of infrastructure is prioritized. Chair, I also want to speak to overcrowding in schools. It's significant, and it's actually a growing problem that's quite multifaceted in the basic education system and requires intervention from Treasury. 2 years ago, then Minister Andrew Motshekga announced a national program to deal with overcrowding in schools. It was called the Special Intervention Process Against Overcrowding in Schools. And unfortunately, this program, it conducted the research, did the costing, found out where and identified schools that were required new classrooms to address overcrowding. But unfortunately, due to cost containment measures, due to current fiscal approach, this was never funded. And so we'd recommend to the committee to just inquire and conduct a bit more oversight, because we think it's necessary to fund it. Overcrowding, and especially in poorer schools, is severe, and it's a growing crisis. This data presented on this slide is from 2017, So you can see across the country, 48% of grade 3 classes are over the size of 40, 17% are over the size of 50, and 6% are over the size of 60. In a system with 1.4 million learners, almost 23,000 schools, this is a great number, and you'll see it's worse in your inland and rural provinces, but definitely is also growing in areas like Gauteng and Western Cape, where there's large immigration as well. And what we're actually seeing is that, unfortunately, not enough teachers are being hired at the moment. Over the past few years, the average learner education ratio has increased. In 2017, where those slides of overcrowding figures were from, the average learner education ratio across the country was 24.4. Today, according to Education Management Information System, it's 28.4. So overcrowding is likely even worse than the already drastic crisis figures that were projected there. Earlier this year, there were 31,000 unfilled educated vacancies, which was an increase. But again, even if these vacancies are filled, I think there's a serious need to fund more educator posts because of the growing learner enrollment and growing overcrowding crisis. And one of these, the ways in which this government does contribute to this is through training of more educators, through the Funza Lushaka bursary allocation. But unfortunately, over the MTF period, the current budget announced cuts to this bursary education as well, to the value of nearly 400 million rand. And unfortunately, what this means is that as more and more teachers retire as well, and overcrowding crisis will not be addressed. And this, again, is another thing that undermines learners' rights to education. So we recommend that the committee advises against these cuts in the appropriations bill. I'd also just want to note that recently, the Funza Lushaka bursary, part of it would have prioritized bursary recipients to be employed in the public education system. And this has recently been changed. They no longer will receive prioritization. In part, it was in efforts to allow schools to and the education system to hire more broadly across the board from and self-funded educators would have equal access to being hired in the system, which is welcome in many ways, because as we noted, there's several unfilled vacancies, and it is a crisis. But we do still think that the bursary scheme, the Funza Lushaka scheme, is important to training more teachers and to equipping the education system, especially in areas such as math and science, where skills are desperately needed. So we just want to stress to the committee that the value of the bursary allocation, even if teachers are not being prioritized through being hired in these posts, should still definitely be protected and increased where possible, because overcrowding is a crisis. And it also manifests in sort of admissions policies. In just June this year, we were at court with education departments, getting them to place unplaced learners who, until halfway into the year, had not been placed, and part of the reason was for overcrowding. So we are in a crisis mode. And we do need a special intervention. Again, I spoke to this a bit earlier. There was a special announced nationally but this program is not being funded, and we stress to the committee to recommend for that to be funded. As you can see, that program 8,000 schools. That's nearly a third of, more than a third of the public schools in existence. So it sort of outlines how dire the overcrowding situation is in this country, and why it's important to protect learners' rights. So we recommend to revise the post-provisioning norms so that more teachers can be paid, and to increase the Funza Leshaka bursary scheme. Also like to echo COSATU's submission and that the Presidential Employment Initiative, or that the decrease in allowance be repealed there. Teaching assistance, especially in the context of overcrowding, becomes very, very useful. And of course, the benefits to youth unemployment and to the people being employed in these posts are tremendous, and to the economy more generally. So we'd also echo that. Also, just want to run through some of the other cuts that have been announced for LTSM, Learner Teacher Support. Government provides work. Unfortunately, nearly 100 million in cuts was announced to this program as well, and we've already seen that workbooks were delivered by January this year, and cost containment measures will not only reduce quite likely the performance of delivery, but also maybe the quality of these workbooks. These workbooks need to last the entire year, so we recommend that those cost containment measures be repealed again, and LTSM budget is adequately funded. There's a lot to be said about early childhood development, and we very much welcome the increased emphasis on ECD going into this next administration and beginning in the previous one, especially in the education sector. But we're starting at a very low base, and these increases need to be consistent. It needs to be evidence-based and driven. Now, we would like to stress, and I think it's well known, that an investment at early stages of a child's life will reap great rewards later, and so funding to this should be prioritized. Unfortunately, you'd see that the 2023 estimates of the ECD grant were higher than what was announced then in the 2024 budget. And so this is a cause of concern. Also, the ECD subsidy per learner is I think 17 Rand, and it hasn't changed since it began in 2019. We recommend that this is far too low, especially for the majority women working in the sector, to provide adequate meals, to have a decent living wage, and to educate children and provide stimulation at this stage. I think the subsidy definitely should be increased. And then supports to helping ECD centers register and have adequate infrastructure is also again necessary. And we also welcome that we see nutrition support is being piloted. The nutrition program at basic education is one of the key poverty alleviators and flagship programs in this country. And if it begins much earlier, then all the better. And we'd like that to be emphasized. Ultimately, Chair and members, I think what I've tried to present to you and through our learner submissions as well is that budget cuts erode the fundamental right to basic education. And we're in a situation where the basic education sector is in dire need of spending. There's severe infrastructure backlogs. Overcrowding is a big problem. We still haven't eradicated plain-pit latrines. We still need water and sanitation in schools. These are very, very integral things, but they're still the building blocks of basic education. Much more funding is needed across the sector for teachers, for quality outcomes, to improve curricula, and so cuts to conditional grants, cuts to the education sector more generally, is not going to help us progress. It's not going to help us achieve the inclusive economic growth that we envision, and so they must be repealed. They must be subjected to a greater level of scrutiny and justification, and we think the committee has a central role to play in that. We'd like for the children's budget to be ring-fenced in particular, so that basic education is protected from wider fiscal consolidation and austerity measures that may be taken by Treasury. And we'd also like to recommend that the committee checks that this appropriations budget, in light of cuts to key social spending services, it should be subjected to constitutional scrutiny. We contend that particularly because the threat to the right to basic education is being undermined by certain cuts, that it does not, and we'd hope that the committee could support us in helping to develop a budget that is constitutionally valid and that allows people, affords them their constitutional rights. I'd like to stress that unlike other socioeconomic rights, education, the right to basic education is an immediately realizable right. And many courts have also ruled that lack of resources, in many cases, is not a valid excuse to failing to for departments to fail to provide this right. And so more needs to be done to ensure that resources are spent and in the correct manner and adequately provided for, so that learners can realize their rights to basic education, and the future of the country is in good hands. Thank you so much, honorable members. I hope I didn't go too far over time, but really appreciate the opportunity to present to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi. And members, this concludes the presentations we were expecting for today. I am going to give to members to make deliberations, ask questions, or make submissions, make comments to both COSATU and Equal Education. But I want to start with the following. I want to check with COSATU now that it is proposing that 150 billion relief from the South African Reserve Bank, which was passed to reduce government borrowings, should now be used to rebuild Eskom and Transnet. What should happen to the much needed reduction of government borrowings, whose repayment impact on resources earmarked for service delivery? That's one for COSATU. And to Equal Education, with regards to the cuts on Funza Lushaka, it is important to note that according to National Treasury reports, some of the allocations were out due to poor expenditure and poor performance. Now, according to your good selves, what is it that the executive can do to address this so that value for money can be optimized? Thank you very much. I see two hands of members on the platform. I will give to Honorable Ryder and Honorable Siwisa, and other members may come afterwards. I see Honorable Bretts, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Siwisa, and Honorable Brett's hands are currently, and then Honorable Numalo and Honorable Ndlovu. In that order, I will start with Honorable Ryder for your submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the presenters of the from the two organizations. Your time and your investment into the process is, as always, much appreciated. COSATU, again, very cogent points brought forward. Mr. Parks, I was just wondering if COSATU's had any insights into the impact. You raised the issue around the transport constraints that we've had, and we've seen issues of lost opportunities as exports are being rerouted via ports outside of South Africa, as our railways have found themselves closing down rather than opening up more space, and not able to meet the demand of producers of goods. And I mean, I think specifically, as I always do, my area is the Vaal, and the station has been something that has been front of mind, not only because it transports a lot of workers who were historically dumped in the Vaal region by the apartheid government during the forced removals of the late 60s and early 70s, and who previously relied on the likes of Putco and also the railway to get to their work, many of them working in the East Rand in the industrial areas. Now their lifeblood has been cut off as they are no longer able to commute as cheaply or as economically as they previously were with the closure of the railway stations there, but also the impact of goods that move on those lines, where a lot of the freight trains can no longer traverse large stretches of the railway network. I was wondering, Mr. Parks, if you could just talk about not only the workers at Transnet and so on, but the knock-on impact that it's had on manufacturers, on agricultural producers and processors and so on, and the negative impact that has had on workers and work opportunities in South Africa. I want to pick particularly on the transport network today, if you can maybe spend a bit of time responding on that. On equal education, I think it's Mr. Rafi. Yeah, thank you very much. Parliament, unfortunately, because of the way we are structured, very often focuses on basic education, and then we take a separate focus on higher education. And I was hoping that today you'd give us a little bit of an analysis in your follow-up round about what funding of the two, what it means to education as a global issue in South Africa. Because realistically, I mean, we're faced with a situation where you know, all of our population is supposed to go through basic education, and only a fairly small percentage goes through higher education, tertiary education. This has obviously been expanded with the introductions of the TVET colleges and similar other organizations that are funded by the higher education department. But the reality is that the higher education, which serves only a small portion of the population, receives 4 times the budget that we give to basic education, which serves the whole population. So this seems to create a little bit of an imbalance in the system. And one knows that, you know, if as you lay a foundation, if your foundation is poor and you come and put a fancy roof up on top, your house will crumble. And I think it's the same with education. If your foundation is weak, by the time you know, as you get to the end of your project, if you then try and bring about too much change that hasn't been properly set up right at the beginning, it sets you up for failure. So you know, I'm also seeing that in spite of the existing imbalance that we see, the basic education budget is only increased by about 1.5%, and the higher education budget is increased by more than 2.75%. So this is kind of widening the gap even. It's creating an existing gap and worsening it. And I mean, this seems to be almost, I don't know, or it seems to be, favoring a smaller group over a bigger one. And I'd love Equal Education to unpack that and the impact that it has, specifically noting the parts of the presentation that indicated the spaces that are being cut, and the big impact that this is having on the basic education system entirely. And then perhaps if you can talk a little bit about the infrastructure backlog. So it was a separate grant in the past. Fortunately, following a little bit of a fight last budget, it remains separate. But if you can just talk to us about the infrastructure backlog grant, and your hopes and vision for that, specifically relating to pit latrines and other, as you said, the mud hut classrooms, etc. That's my input for today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Ryder. Honorable Siwisa.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning again, colleagues. Let me also welcome the presentation that was done by COSATU and Equal Education. Chair, I'm going to start with COSATU. At the moment, the country is standing at 8.2. Unemployment with the upcoming retrenchments that we are facing, it means that the number of unemployment is going to go high. And the country in its 30 years has not implemented or tried to introduce or even tried to advocate or make any plans to introduce industrialization, which is going to ensure that there's going to be employment. So what is your view pertaining industrialization that will ensure that employment within the country is going to increase? And another thing, Chair, that we need to look into is that there are also small-scale miners that are out there. Many of them, there's a program that has started that says Valum Kodi, whereby there are people that are actually extracting from the old shafts to try and make a living. To COSATU, how can those small-scale miners managed properly, whereby it's going to have an impact to ensure that there is actually economic growth in the country and also to ensure that there is employment? Because if you lock up these people today, somebody else is going to come in. So what strategies can be put? What strategies does COSATU think can be put in place to assist those people, to make sure that there's proper mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that they do things properly? Because some of these small-scale miners, they actually end up dying in these holes, and because some of these shafts actually fall on them. Pertaining the issue that COSATU is saying of the virtual meetings, that they should continue because public has access. It will be easier for the public to access Parliament. Now, the question would arise, how do you think we should deal with people that do not have access to internet or don't even know how to actually use certain gadgets for them to be able to hear what needs to be heard by Parliament? If we don't go to Parliament, or if we don't do our constituency work, and then we decide that we want to do it in the comfort of our houses using the internet, either Zoom or Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram or TikTok, there are certain people that do not have access to those things. So how do you think it will be easier to assist those people to actually have access if we don't go to them? I don't have many questions when it comes to equal education, Chair, but it's more of an input and a concern. As a former educator myself, I would fully agree with what equal education is saying. The difficulties that the schools are going through, the lack of infrastructure, the overcrowded classes, which actually lead to teachers not being able to give individual attention to the learners, especially in the lower grades, your grade 1 to 3, which is a very, you are speaking about kids that left home, that they are coming to school, they are not used to the environment. And now the educator cannot give them individual attention because of the classes are overcrowded. And overcrowded classes always lead to you cannot even identify, you are unable to identify children that are going through difficult times, either in the community or at home or even in school, because of there's too many children in the class, which has a negative impact. The issue of reading material or books and stationery that is needed is also of a concern. And if there's not more funds put into basic education, because yesterday, Chair, if you remember, the PPO, when they made their presentation, they said that money has been reducted due to the issue that many learners are dropping out. And then one needs to ask, why are learners dropping out of school? And I don't think that's I'm going to say what I said yesterday, that the question maybe needs to be put to the Minister of Basic Education and the Minister of Higher Education. You find that more money is spent on higher education and yet less money is spent. If a child does not get the proper education at the lower grade or at school level, then it means that that child would never even, some of them don't even reach grade 12 for them to go to tertiary institution, which is of a great concern that according to the budget allocation, more money should have been spent on basic education and less money should be spent on higher education, because some of these learners, they get NSFAS, which is very proper, which is going to assist them. Some of them, they become lucky to even get bursaries from somewhere to be able to be taught. But in a nutshell, what is being spent in basic education is very low. And the issue of the increase on the learner-educator ratio is also of a concern. That from 2017, 24.4, and then 2023, it's at 28.4. It means that the basic education is not doing what needs to be done. We are still sitting with pit toilets, which we don't know how far is the process going to be, or are we just going, but it's something that we need to look into. And I would like to say to Equal Education, we appreciate the presentation that they've done. It at least gave us more light as to actually what's happening out there. And also, it makes us to be able to engage more properly and be able to write the right questions on their behalf to ensure that they proceed to give us the information about the state of schools, the state of how things are done in school. But maybe they should, if they do have anything on scholar transport, because it's also one of the issues that are burning, whereby learners have to walk long distances, which can also be one of the effects that may lead learners not to go to school because the school is too far, there is no transport. Sometimes the transport comes, sometimes the transport breaks down, which can also be one of the effects that makes learners never to go to school again because the school is too far. The issue of placement, the system that is being introduced across all these provinces, that parents need to apply online. If the child is too far from the school, then the child is not going to be taken in that school. But the reality would be the school that's next to the child is not the school that the parents are actually looking for. So they prefer another school because of the quality of the education that is being given by that school. I'm going to make an example about 3 schools in Kimberley. There are 3 schools that are in the same vicinity, they are practically 5 minutes walk from each other. One school operates almost like a school in your Model C school. The other one operates like your normal township school. The other one is what we call, if a learner doesn't get any school anywhere, this is where you'll take your child. And all of these three schools, you'd see that the education department is not treating all three schools the same. The other one is getting more attention because of how they operate. And now the question would be, how does the basic education assist the other two schools to be in the same level as the other one that is more likely operating like a Model C school? So those are also some of the things, Chair, when it comes to education that they need to be looked into. Because if all schools are not given the same support, then it means that one school is going to be preferred by parents than the other schools. And then you find that that school that is being preferred end up being overcrowded because of how they work and how the support that they get from education, how they are being advised to do things, and then there's no intervention done for the other two schools. And I'm speaking about schools that are literally next to each other. They are all high schools, but the other one looks like a Model C, the other one looks like a normal township school. The other one is full of kids that are problematic, that have been rejected. And that's the school that actually needs to be given attention and needs to be given support. But for some reason, such schools are not given any support. So maybe equal education, maybe they can take us through about scholar transport. How does it affect the attendance of learners at school, and how does it affect production of making sure that learners are actually becoming what they need to become in society? Another issue is the quality of education. I would like to put it to equal education. Do you think that the curriculum...
I'm going to
request... I'm going to wrap up. Is the curriculum suitable to accommodate for employment in South Africa? The curriculum that we are using now, the system that we are using, do you think that it's suitable enough to accommodate for employment if learners leave school in South Africa? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Siwisa. Honorable Brett.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just going to turn my camera, if you don't mind. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I would like to start off by saying thank you very much to both COSATU as well as the Equal Education and Equal Education Law Centre for their submissions today. Thank you for taking the time and for presenting your standpoints to this committee. First of all, Mr. Rafi, I think it's Mr. Rafi, if I'm correct, will you please convey our appreciation to the learner, the young learner Katlego, I believe, for her courage and the time that she took to compile and submit a presentation to this Committee of Parliament. I think we must encourage that, where young people tell their stories to Parliament, and to take the courage to engage as politicians in discussions where they are involved and where their futures are being decided. Mr. Rafi, as the Honourable Ryder already pointed out, I'm not going to repeat, but please note that I stand sympathetic towards the cause of education and the cause of learners in basic education sphere and that space. I've been involved myself with education in especially primary schools for many years, and I do realize what they need to go through on a daily basis. Coming to Mr. Parks. Mr. Parks, thank you very much. These one or two statements that you've made that cannot be left unchallenged. I don't want to engage in a debate. I'm just going to point it out to you. you said in your revenue proposal, especially under the heading COSATU proposals, the third bullet, and I'm going to quote inter alia, the RAF and Road Accident Benefit Scheme bills to place the RAF on a sustainable path. Up to that point, I totally agree with you, by the way. But now, and ensure its funds are directed to the poor and not pilfered by lawyers. Now, Mr. Parks, besides from being a member of Parliament, I am a duly admitted attorney of the High Court of South Africa, and I'm also a member of the LPC, the Legal Practice Council. First, what I want to mention, the RAF and RAF funds were never intended by legislation for the poor, but for victims of motor vehicle accidents, irrespective of their status. So that statement is dubious, and I place a question around the sentiments that RAF funds must be directed to the poor. Then we are missing legislation and the reason for the existence of the RAF. Then secondly, the part where you state pilfered by lawyers, I just want to mention for the ease of reference that the LPC president, one of Cape Town's attorneys, engaged the RAF on that statement, and there was widespread coverage of that whole issue, and to date, that is still hotly contested between the LPC as well as the RAF, but I think it is a bit irresponsible to make such a statement on a public platform. But as I say, I don't want to engage you in debate with that. But I want to hear COSATU, especially on your proposals, in order to stimulate our economy and in order to address unemployment. I would like to hear COSATU, how do you propose that the private enterprise be stimulated to create a conducive environment for private companies to conduct business, thereby stimulating the economy and creating employment opportunities in the private sector? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Brits. Honorable Numalo. Honorable Numalo.
Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. Hello, can you hear me, Honorable Chair? Chair?
You are audible.
Okay. I wanted to close my video because I'm having a problem of network where I am.
No,
thank you very much for thank you very much for the opportunity given unto me, Chairperson, and also to take this opportunity to welcome the two presentations, one from COSATU and also Equal Education. Chairperson, it's true that the issue of early childhood education is key so that we can be able to make sure that we check in terms of the performance of a child at an early age up until at the higher level. Chairperson, on the issue of dropout, it's a concern because whenever you check someone who is starting education, they don't reach the 12-year period of basic education. So somewhere along the way, they drop out of school, which is a challenge, especially in our rural community, because in most cases, those kids are leaving school for other things that will disturb them along the way. So I think the issue is that we must be able to trace and monitor as to what is happening in terms of dropout, what is the key, what is the matter, what causes the child to leave school before he can complete his primary education. Chairperson, it is a matter of concern. Chair, in terms of load shedding, to make sure that we allocate load shedding more amount of money, it's true that because through load shed, through electricity, most people can be able to generate income, like starting their own business, saloon and whatever in our township. It's part of our township economy to assist the community at large in terms of making sure that they start their own business and be able to sustain themselves. Chairperson, on the issue of sanitation, is true. We even discussed it yesterday with Public Works in terms of making sure that our young kids at school are getting the best sanitation, because it's really embarrassing to know, because they said sanitation is dignity. It's true that we must make sure that we put more so that our kids can have the best sanitation. That is then I want to support the recommendation by COSATU on the issue that they've stated. And the issue of bailout by post office and other metro rail and other things, always it is a problem that we are very much indebted as a country, but all in all, we'll be heavy bailing out some of our entities. And it's a worrying factor that there's a high unemployment rate, and the post office is also want to retrench most of their employees. It's something that we have to look at and make sure that we come up with strategies that will assist our people, not to add on the high unemployment that we are having in our community. Chairperson, the other issue, it's the issue of high unemployment. It's something that the president in his speech has said a lot, to make sure that we come up with strategies, way of curbing the high unemployment that we are faced, especially to our young people. I think the COSATU is spot on, and also the quality education. They've come up with programs that will assist us to follow them, so that our young people, our kids, can be able to get the necessary and the productive education that will assist them in the future. So with this, I want to make sure that I support their recommendation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mumalo, Honorable Ndlovu.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. Let me start by greeting everybody, starting from yourself, Honorable Chair, my colleagues in the platform, COSATU, and equal education. I want to start with COSATU. You see, Chairperson, sometimes it's difficult to talk after your week because my apologies, Chair. Because some of the things you find that she has spoken about those other things. Chair, I want to indicate that the issue of dropouts, I will request that COSATU should assist the government in making sure that whatever challenges in the schools, it is being addressed. Because you find that most of the time, the SGBs are elected and the parents, remember, SGBs are the parents. And you cannot blame teachers for the situation at the school or the disorderly of learners at the school. So it is important for COSATU to assist us as government to make sure that there is more intervention or more workshops, so that whatever that is happening in the schools, the parents can take the responsibility and not even going to the teachers at the schools. So that's what we also want to request, the intervention on that. So especially that relates to the issue of retrenchment. I'm coming from Tabazimbi, Chair, where as I'm talking, you find that the post office have retrenched, or the post office is not working, especially in Northern. So the question that I ask myself, what does COSATU do in terms of this situation? It's my first time being the member of parliament. So I'll also want to see the situation or the recommendations from COSATU to say, what is it that we need to make, what is it that we have to intervene on, especially in terms of making sure that we bring services to the community, and what went wrong in terms of the situation. So the proposal of COSATU, I agree also, Chair, to second it so that all the SOEs could be budgeted and make sure that they operate. The other thing, Chair, that I also want to talk about is the issue of the virtual meetings. I think Honorable Siwisa spoke about it, of which even myself, I can agree to that. There's no network.
Honorable Ndlovu, I am sorry for doing this. I think that is our housekeeping issue that have nothing to do with COSATU nor equal education. Can we just pack it a little bit until we get to the announcements? For now, let's concentrate on what has been presented before us.
The visual?
Yes.
No, COSATU spoke about it.
Especially as I am going to request that we keep that issue, especially that you are referring to what Honorable Siwesa raised in a meeting where COSATU and equal education was not part of. I am going to request that all housekeeping issues that are meant for the running of the committee be addressed at a later stage. For now, we are dealing with the reports that have been put before us.
No, okay, Chair, but the COSATU mentioned it on their presentation. Okay, let me pack it as you request. Let me go to equal education, Chair. I also want to appreciate the effort by Katlego that at least she be the one of the learners who is able to submit the proposal to the government and the Parliament Committee. Lastly, Chair, the education, the equal education should also go back to the budget presented by the Minister of Public Works, where it was the Minister of Public Works yesterday, where he spoke about the war on pit toilet. I think all the departments have spoken about the war on pit toilet, and the government is dealing with that matter. And obviously, there will be a response in terms of the issue of the pit toilet. Today, Chair, around 2 o'clock, we'll also be listening to the MECs for education. So we'll also want to invite the equal education and COSATU to also listen to the presentation of all the MECs around 2 o'clock on the appropriation bill. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndlovu. I'm going to give this chance to first COSATU to respond or to engage with members on their submissions. And then after COSATU, I will give to Equal Education to respond. Over to you, COSATU, Mr. Parks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks to members for the questions. Yeah. So, Chair, just with regards to the first question from Honorable, I think it was from yourself, Chair, on the issue of the 150 billion rand debt relief from the Reserve Bank, not debt relief, sorry, fiscal relief. No, we had proposed to Parliament during the DFRECA hearings that that money really should have been used for Eskom and Transnet. We accept that for the current financial year that chain has come and gone. Our motivation, though, Chair, was about what can have a biggest impact in the longer term. What's the fiscal multiplier? And Eskom and Transnet are our two most critical economic assets. So if you give them money, you give them support, you will recover that quite quickly when the economy is unlocked, when businesses are able to be productive and sell their goods or transport them, when jobs are saved, etc. Because that will generate the taxes that government needs to turn things around. But look, out of the 150 billion rand, 100 billion rand has already been allocated this year. There'll be two further entrenchments or transfers of 25 billion rand each for the next 2 years. We still would think that could be used to give support to Transnet and Eskom, given the high levels of debt, etc. And whilst one does appreciate the support already being allocated to Eskom, one of the difficulties with Eskom and Transnet's debt relief from government is that government wants them to pay it back. And I think, Chair, we want to appreciate that these are extraordinary times. Eskom and Transnet are just simply in serious danger. And yes, one wouldn't normally want to have a write-off approach to debt, etc. But I think given that Eskom and Transnet, the impact is huge. Eskom upon every workplace, every company. Transnet obviously around the mining, the manufacturing, the agricultural sectors, which are the backbone of the economy. And I think, Chair, also there is a discussion still useful that because there's going to be, I think, further engagement around future surpluses from the Reserve Bank contingency reserves and how that could also be utilized to assist the state going forward. Chair, I think just to Honorable Ryder, I think thanks to members, Honorable Ryder and all the members for the comments. I think for us, the issue of, we've seen good progress on Eskom. I think we do really commend Eskom and government for the work in that regard. Obviously, we're not out of the woods yet. I think for us right now, the biggest threat to the economy has been Transnet. We have seen good progress, I think, since November last year. Slowly at first, but I think we've seen some more in the past 6 months with the appointment of new leadership at Transnet. We are seeing the kind of the queues at the ports being reduced, etc. But I think Honorable Ryder hit a point about displacement because we have seen a lot of ships just simply offloading their products at Maputo, at Walvis Bay, etc. That creates a possible displacement effect to Durban, to other ports, Cape Town and so forth in South Africa. We've also had reports, quite a lot of reports of some companies just simply dumping their products at Mauritius and saying to South African companies, you can sort yourself out finding it. I think that is quite worrying. We've lost out on 2 commodity booms as a country because of the difficulties at Transnet. And I think to be fair to Transnet, yes, some things it can fix and it must fix by itself. The modernization of the ports, the buying of the right cranes, machinery, investing in the skills of staff, etc. Finding a way of addressing the staff concerns about retrenchments, putting in place performance bonus systems, etc. But I think some things are very difficult for Transnet. How do we expect Transnet on its own to tackle the endemic levels of cable theft? And we've seen literally thousands of kilometers of cable theft crippling Transnet, also Metro Rail as well. There needs to be a much more coherent security plan in partnership with the police, the Defence Force, state security, with private sector security as well. We have seen some possible potential good examples of that partnership on the coal corridor to Richards Bay. But obviously much more needs to be done. Ideally, we should be finding a way to move away from copper to other materials like fiber and so on, because you can't forever in a day police every single kilometer of cable. Also, we would want to say that it would be a useful discussion to have. Could we use the presidential promise stimulus, for example, to hire, to support neighborhood watches, community policing, for example, in many of our communities, especially in the rural areas, etc., in our townships? Because again, if you have 178,000 police officers, give or take, they won't have the capacity ever to patrol 50,000 kilometers of railway, etc. It's just not physically possible. But there is a huge impact when Transnet bleeds, Chair. The 56 billion rand revenue shortfall we saw in the MTBS last year, October, I think 55% was directly from the mining industry, which was directly because of the issues of Transnet, etc. So I think, Chair, for us, we've got to fix it. And whatever we must do to fix it, we need to move with speed. Otherwise, we will simply continue along this 1% growth trajectory. And we've seen a consequence to workers. We've seen a spate of mining retrenchments from November, December last year. Even more recently at Sibanye, I think it's a notice of about 2,000 going forward. So I think for us, that is a very alarming situation. I think you had similar challenges, not at the same level, but similar challenges at Metro Rail. Often people, like in Cape Town, for example, would take the train lines, they would take 2 hours to get to work. Not because the journey takes 2 hours, but because of signals are not working because of cable theft. We saw, a train accident in Pretoria a few years ago. People's lives were lost. Again, signaling due to cable theft. There's been huge problems of vandalism and arson. About 10 years ago, government, I think, bought about, forget the number of carriages. I think it's about 1,100 or something like that. So it's a significant amount. We spent about 300 billion rand over that MTF period. And we've lost about 100 carriages because of vandalism, of arson, etc. And often you get reports from workers at Metro Rail about inside jobs and so forth, collusion by the security companies. So quite alarming things. The previous Minister of Police had often made commitments, or not commitments rather, he made pleas for insourcing of security, allocating that money to revive a police railway unit. We think that could be something worthwhile looking at. Obviously, it would need to be a dedicated railway unit, given the impact and the importance of metro rail and transit to commuters, to the economy, to industry, etc. Chair, I think just to think, Honourable Siwisa, on the issue of industrialization, look, we can't, and I think it also goes to Honourable Brits as well, we can't continue to sustain an economy of a 42% unemployment rate or 59% youth unemployment rate. That is simply suicide. It's a ticking time bomb. We think one critical way to addressing is around industrialization, as Honourable Siwisa has said, because your social grants, it's a short and medium-term relief. It's not the solution at the end of the day. We've been alarmed that, Chair, out of a budget of about 2.2 trillion rand, we allocate about 20 billion rand for industrialization. It really is a drop in the ocean. We've seen cuts or below inflation increases over the past few years to industrial financing, to export incentive programs. We think there is a need to review all of these incentives programs to see which ones are efficient, which ones are not really worthwhile. But I think the point is here, how can we drastically increase the funding for industrialization, for export incentives? Because ultimately that is our solution to stabilize, to protect, to grow local industries and local businesses and value chains, and also to create the jobs that go with them, which often are decent jobs. So we think that as we move into the new administration, there is work that's been done by the previous administration around localization. The President signed yesterday the public procurement bill, which will enhance the onus in the state across all levels to support local businesses, locally produced goods. There has been good work done on the master plans, with 8 signed off, another 7 or so which have the potential to be signed off. And we've seen some green shoots there. For example, the big local retailers have committed to increasing the stock of locally produced clothes on the shelves from 40 to 60%. We've seen a significant increase in the production of motor vehicles, etc. But I think we need to do much more to support this, because ultimately that is where our solution lies, not necessarily giving social grants. There is good work that's been done around the trade front. One is securing AGOA, which we're in danger of losing. We're well on track on that front. Much more needs to be done to see how can we fast track the African continental free trade area, because that is where our strategic economic future lies. Chair, in terms of small-scale mining, I think we've seen the consequence of lack of enforcement of the laws, because mining companies are obliged to secure old shafts when they leave it. And I think we've seen the stats. I think it's about 2,000 or so mining shafts which have simply been abandoned by mining companies. The state struggles to have the capacity to rehabilitate them, to safely secure them, etc. And I think we've seen, for example, in Krugersdorp and other parts of the Northwest, the consequences, the chaos we've seen with armed criminal syndicates taking it over, the violence brought to local communities, the health and safety issues, etc. So there is a need for an urgent solution to address it, and the mining industry needs to be part of assisting that, and seeing how can we assist and support small-scale mining companies. Equally, we would hope to see the announcement this year by Minister Mantashe about a revamped mining cadastral system, which I hope can unlock mining investments, because that's also been a real cause of chaos for the economy. Chair, I think just the other issues to Honourable Brits. No, we would be happy to have a further discussion, Chair. The previous parliaments have had discussion on it. I think let's leave aside the ideological debates, as Honourable Brits has said. The point is the RAF is in a mess. I think that no one will dispute that. It has 400 billion rand worth of liability, so it's got a greater set of liabilities than that Eskom has got, and it's been rising year after year. Claimants are not receiving the money time and again. There's been countless reports of monies due to claimants, 3 million, 5 million rand, half of it going to lawyers. That can't be right. And if the RAF, which is funded by workers, funded by commuters through the fuel levy, if it has limited resources, then just like with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, like with the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Fund, if there's a limited amount of money we have available, and we can't simply just increase the fuel levy ad nauseum, given how fuel prices have basically doubled in the past decade, then we need to say that that money should be geared like with the UF and the Compensation Fund, to assist those who earn the least. And there already is a basis with the RAF in terms of the income cap, etc. But you can't have a scenario where, for example, somebody from Switzerland gets a payment of 50 million rand, yet an ordinary commuter or worker from Mitchell's Plain is struggling to get his 3 million rand. And yes, one should say, look, the RAF itself must take responsibility. It has been thoroughly mismanaged for years. This is what has opened the space for corruption. This has also opened up people being dependent upon lawyers to assist what should be a free application process, and also can't be right that people can take 2 years to get the money through. So I think the point is, Chair, I think no one will disagree. The RAF is a mess and it needs to be fixed. And Department of Transport, I think in the 5th Parliament, had tabled the RAF and the RABS bills to kind of set the RAF on a financially sustainable trajectory. Those were rejected by the Portfolio Committee in Transport at that stage. And since that time, there's been no real coherent action from government to fix it. And I don't think we would say it would be responsible to allow the RAF to continue on this path. We've seen in the media headlines, I think sure all members have seen it last year, where sheriffs have had gone to attach property because their claims are standing, and workers at the RAF are now having to go to work with milk crates for chairs. So I think, Chair, there is a need to find a solution to it. But the status quo, that can't be a solution. Chair, I think the other question of Honourable Brits, what needs to be done to fix the economy? ESCOM, could that boost or cripples all workplace productivity? And we've seen good progress there, but more can be done to turn ESCOM back into the engine of the economy's growth, and even to become once again a source of exports to the region of surplus electricity. Similarly with regards to Transnet, because that's key to mining, manufacturing, agriculture. Metro rail is key to the urban economy. Similarly, other SOEs, which once were initiators of economic growth, whether it's Denel or the post office, etc. But I think also, Chair, we must be alarmed. I think it's critical for the NCOP in terms of its role, constitutional role, the state of local government in rural areas. We've seen, for example, in Lichtenberg, in Frankfurt, etc., Clover closing because the quality municipal services of roads, of sanitation, of electricity collapsed. And the consequence was those workers lost their jobs. And if you go to a town like Lichtenberg, you'll see there that dairy farms are literally the backbone of the only economy. So if you collapse the capacity of dairies, for example, then that community is in serious trouble of danger becoming a ghost town. I think similarly with regards to crime and corruption, we've seen, you'll see in the MTBS, many of the same municipalities like Madibeng and so forth, struggling to spend their money around infrastructure. Yet if you go to Madibeng, you must drive in between potholes. So I think there is a need for a much more assertive and aggressive approach to state of local government. We do need to have a bit of a review around incentives and financing for SMEs. And it's been amazing, Chair, that we have, for example, the employment tax incentive. But when you engage with Treasury, no one can give you a real impact assessment about what is its impact, has it helped to create jobs, etc. And if we're spending money on these programs, either we should know they're delivering the goods, or we should review them and see, could we use the money in a different way to support SMEs, emerging sectors? Could you, for example, use the public employment programs to support recycling as an emerging sector of the economy, absorbing a lot of unemployed persons? Could you use it, for example, like the presidential farmers to help emerging farmers? And could you combine that with CEDA or SME funding, etc.? We think there is a need to give more support to SARS around customs enforcement. We inspect basically about 10% of goods coming through our ports of entry. So that means a lot of illicit goods are coming through, whether it's tobacco, whether it's clothing, etc. Those that do declare their value often under-declare it deliberately, and that impacts upon local jobs, local industries, etc. Chair, just in terms of Honourable Nxumalo around ECDs, one of the reasons we had supported the Bella Bill, Chair, was that it was going to formalize ECD as a part of the formal education curriculum, require parents to make sure their kids go to grade R and give a better foundation for their success through school. Because the Honourable Member is correct, you can't celebrate 1 out of 2 kids who enter grade 1 not matriculating, and even half of those who matriculate don't get university exemption, etc. The high dropouts should be alarming. We had actually hoped in the Bella Bill, we had made a proposal to the 6th Parliament. Why are we allowing people who are age 15 kids to leave school? They should be required to stay in school, required to complete grade 12, and even aggressively asserted assisted to go to TVET or tertiary education. But we shouldn't be creating a permanent class of unemployed young people with very few qualifications and skills. That's not doing them a favor, it's not doing society a favor. We do need to have a better discussion about what are the outputs of our education system from basic to tertiary. But I think there are real challenges of vacancies of teachers, of rising numbers of learner-teacher ratios in our township schools, the infrastructure backlog. We do hope the new Minister of Public Works, Honorable McPherson, and will be able to tackle for once and for all the shameful backlog of sanitation at schools. There is a real problem of violence, of criminality in our township schools. And I think COSATU, our teachers union, has long been raising these issues with regards to schools, etc., etc. I think, Chair, I think we've covered the issue of rural employment as well. I think, Chair, just the last point to Honorable Ndlovu. On the post office, I mean, the post office, the post bank, or let's say the post office rather. I think that the issue there, yes, there was incompetent management, there was corruption too. But there was also deep structural shifts in the sector where people are no longer post letters. But the Sixth Parliament had passed two important laws. One has been signed by the President, the Post Bank Act. Other one, the Post Office Amendment Bill, is waiting his signature, which we think will be done shortly. But they provide a bit of a useful lifeline to the post office in helping to repivot. So the Post Office Amendment Bill speaks to the post office entering the courier space, which is highly lucrative. Also becoming a one-stop shop for government services. So you can apply for your social grants, your ID, other civic services, SME funding, etc. So to really kind of utilize the post office's huge footprint to expand services to customers, to society. We are worried about the approach, which basically says we'll close 200 post office branches, we'll retrench 6,000 post office employees, because if you continue to shrink it, you might find one day it's difficult to revive it, and it has a huge footprint. Similarly, the post bank too. It has about 1 million customers, if my memory serves me right. They have the capacity, but we also think government too should be utilizing them. So UNICEF, for example, should be utilizing a post office to courier its materials to learners. Government departments should be utilizing the post bank as this banking service provider. But it does mean the post office and the post bank need to be assisted to get off their feet and to provide the quality services that customers, the state require. But we think it can be done. And SARS has shown you, ESCOM has shown you, if you appoint competent management, you give us the right support, you fill vacancies, it can turn around. But we don't have a choice. It's just simply allow key arms of the state to collapse. I think that was all the questions. Hope I didn't take too long. I think, thanks, Chair. Thanks, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Rafi.
Thank you so much, honorable members. I appreciate the questions and the comments. I think very much often in alignment, and hope that you'll be able to take the voices of learners and the issues facing the education system further forward. I definitely will convey your appreciation to Katlego. It's unfortunate that audio wasn't listened, didn't play today, but hopefully in the future they will get a chance to engage with the committee, and hopefully that would also be live. We appreciate efforts to make it more Parliament more accessible to the people, and so especially maybe like a learner in Limpopo, for example, virtual settings do help in that regard. However, sort of school times also sometimes make it a bit difficult, but by and large, principals, teachers are quite supportive. If sufficient time and preparation is in place, then learners do take up the opportunity to present to committees, and I think it's a very valuable experience. To the questions, I think the first is to addressing sort of cuts that were announced because of poor expenditure and poor performance. I think the first thing to note about this approach is that ultimately the learner is being made to suffer and their rights may be jeopardized because of the cuts. The cuts don't help improve the performance necessarily, and then the costs therefore fall on people who cannot afford to pay the costs, and it's a vicious cycle. There are several ways to address underperformance and underspending. I think these should be deployed more aggressively, but not necessarily not through cuts. So, for example, for Funza Doshaka, maybe because it's administered through the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, and we know they've had problems with maladministration, etc. Perhaps it should be brought back in-house to the Department of Basic Education to control directly. That could be explored, or alternatively, efforts to fix NSFAS. Hopefully, they see fruition soon, and we'll get more value for money. Other examples, maybe through, especially in the infrastructure grants, there's various implementing agents who are contracted to deliver infrastructure, and it creates a middleman in the delivery of infrastructure. There's also, because there's various different implementing agents, it's not always there are sometimes sort of duplications of efforts, or communication channels are not very clear. And then these implementing agents also hire various contractors, and their contracting process is also not necessarily subject to oversight by departments of education or by school learners, school communities, etc. So reforms to things like that in the contracting process may help. And there's certainly a wide range of interventions that would vary from contract to contract or grant to grant, but ultimately it's important to highlight that learners, it should not come at their expense. The Treasury still has an obligation to fund the right to basic education, and that should be paramount. Also, just want to maybe address the I guess it's a slight misnomer that higher education is funded 4 times higher than basic education. That's not true. Although for the Appropriations Bill, it is true. That's because the Appropriations Bill only funds the national departments, and basic education is a provincial duty. So the majority of basic education departments, teachers, schools, districts, circuits, they get their funding from provinces that comes out of the provincial equitable share, and the basic education department, when consolidated across the board, would be about 325 billion rand per year. But under the Appropriations Bill, I think it's reflected as around 30 somewhat billion. That's because it only funds the National Department of Basic Education, and not the provinces. Although provinces do receive benefits through the services provided by the DBE and through the conditional grants, which we give our bulk of our submissions on as well. So yeah, it's just maybe important to highlight that. And then, although not necessarily directly relevant to this bill, it's I think the determination of the provincial equitable share is central to education. But there are difficulties in oversight because provinces have provincial governments have the freedom to allocate however much they think is necessary to education, and then therefore I guess we have to engage with various provincial treasuries and committee provincial parliaments around those respective appropriations. That also does become sort of an obstacle with monitoring things like scholar transport, LCSM, teacher employment, and things like that, because they again are employed by provinces, and the National Department of Education does not always have a direct a role in this. They mostly determine policies, conduct oversight, etc. Although we would submit, I think scholar transport is, in particular, is a very there's differentiated costs by province to province. You'd find, I guess, rural provinces, because schools are a bit more further dispersed. There's ongoing rationalization. Many schools have been closed down in recent years, thousands, in fact, and primarily due to cost containment measures, etc. And so there's become an increased reliance on the provision of scholar transport. Perhaps a committee should consider a conditional grant for scholar transport, because the determinants of scholar transport would differ from the determinants of that are allocated in the provincial equitable share. Alternatively, as we've been advocating for quite some time, is changes to the provincial equitable share to account for things like scholar transport, to account for things like rurality, higher costs in rural provinces, and making sure that provinces with a greater proportion of poorer schools are actually funded more. Unfortunately, that's not entirely the case at this moment in the formula. And I guess when the next division of revenue bill comes up, we can discuss that in a bit more detail, but as well as any time outside of that, I think these are important measures that the committee can engage with Treasury and provinces to make real differences to the progressiveness of basic education funding and of government funding more generally. I just also want to stress that it's not well, basic education, as many members and in fact ourselves have pointed out, ECD as well, are the fundamental building blocks of the economy of society, of employment, progress, development. It shouldn't be pitted against higher education. Of course, higher education, there are greater private returns relative to the social returns in basic education, but they both, I think, key elements of developing society. They complement each other, if nothing else, and shouldn't rob Peter to pay Paul, shouldn't put them against each other. What's important, I think, as many members have noted, is strengthening basic education so that you can strengthen access to and outputs of higher education. We know currently employment, youth unemployment is very dire. The education system is, especially basic education system, not very conducive. Unfortunately, together with the prevailing economic malaise that we find ourselves in, this is a difficult situation that we're in, and the returns as measured in employment and income are not exceptional in basic education, but they do increase dramatically as well with higher education outcomes. Of course, it's and there's lots of various different factors involved. It's not necessarily due to the quality of the education system. It's this whole mess of an economy that we're in, and these are all interrelated. But I think we can be certain that if people are trained with better skills from an earlier age, but throughout their lives, that they'll be able to better contribute to the economy as employees, as business owners, as care workers, which is an important aspect of the economy as well. And these social and employment-related skills should both be very much stressed in our education system. On the school infrastructure backlogs grants, so yeah, maybe just to go back again on the different types of grants. There's two grants for education infrastructure. The one is the school infrastructure backlogs grant, and the one is the education infrastructure grant. The education infrastructure grant is the largest grant, but it's given directly to provinces, and provinces control how it's spent. The school infrastructure backlogs grant is as an in-kind grant. It's administered by the National Department of Basic Education. And so because there's these two grants, they have slightly different mandates. They're both meant to alleviate infrastructure backlogs, but the EIG is meant to help provinces or supplement their infrastructure spending, while the SIBG is dedicated to some of the most pressing backlogs and eradicating them at a rapid pace. But unfortunately, because of these challenges, again, in how the education system is structured, where it's sort of a provincial mandate, provincial departments report to both to provinces and to the National Department of Education, but there's sort of some information asymmetries. It's not a good, I guess, communication channels so that everyone is always on the same page. It has led to sort of some duplication in the SIBGs, some inefficiencies in the way that these grants are administered. This is definitely something that should be improved upon. I think it's quite common, if I'm not mistaken, not just in the education space where different arms of government have difficulties communicating with each other, but where there's different departments involved, etc. We need to strengthen these things. I think basic education has especially the National Department, has a strong role to play in here because it's so central to so many other things that occur in society, and basic education serves almost everybody who lives in South Africa. They are strategically placed to ensure that there's effective coordination and collaboration, and we'd advise that, or we'd like to encourage that to be leveraged a bit better and improved, so that the outcomes across society and amongst learners is improved as well. There's also sort of the problems of learner admissions. Again, it's slightly unfortunate. The recent Bella bill wanted to give heads of departments, provincial departments, rights to review school admissions policies, or to approve school admissions policies, to ensure that no students are being unfairly discriminated against, and that could have maybe helped correct for some of the legacies of spatial apartheid, some of the problems as well that Honorable Siwa spoke to, where some schools get some learners who go to some schools are more privileged than others, and so there needs to be various efforts made to correct for how learners are placed so that support is given equally to learners irrespective of their background, or equitably, I should say. And there definitely needs to be better interventions made, I think, as well at provincial and district levels in how to identify and assist underperforming schools, how to make sure that resources are equitably spread. Currently, schools are funded through the national norms and standards for school funding. This is excluding wages, so it's excluding personnel expenditure and excluding capital expenditure, so excluding wages and infrastructure primarily. And that is done very like on a fairly equitable basis. No-fee schools are given about 1,000, just short of 1,700 Rand per learner per year. And your former Model C schools, Quintile 1 schools, are given much less than that. I think it's between 200 and 300 Rand per learner per year. And so that's one measure that's, I think, important to addressing the sharp, strong divides that we see in schools between lower income community schools that serve lower income communities and schools that serve wealthier communities. But again, this is a really minuscule part of the overall education budget. I think there's other interventions that are necessary. So the post-provisioning norms, for example, is one. The amount of teachers that are dedicated to poorer schools versus more wealthier schools can be relooked at to make it a bit more progressive. There's also perhaps maybe incentives that could be introduced to make sure that poorer schools can attract better qualified or better experienced teachers. Unfortunately, because of the conditions in these schools, because of a range of various factors, teachers who are better experienced, better qualified, tend to be concentrated in wealthier schools. It should also be noted that these wealthier schools are able to leverage exorbitant fees, which actually make up the majority of their funding, while the majority of schools in South Africa, no-fee schools, they rely on state funding primarily and on donations, etc. And that just distorts the picture, makes one of the ways in which the gaps can be increased. Schools, especially the Quintile 1 schools, are, they charge 20,000, 30,000 Rand and upwards per learner per year, and that by far outweighs the spending that government can provide to these schools. And so ways to improve the efficacy of no-fee policies, but also of exemption policies and access for poor learners into these wealthier schools should be encouraged to bolster the public education system, make resources a bit more equitably distributed and ensure access and equity in the system. I think is important, but fundamentally important is also improving the quality of schooling in less resourced, poorer schools. We know many members did allude to problems of crime, gangsterism, high dropout schools, which are more acute in lower income communities and often in rural areas as well. I think there are a range of interventions that provincial education departments can and should commit to this. In terms of resources, I think I've mentioned teachers. I think there's also a thing of safety infrastructure. Lots of schools are without fences, being vandalized. They don't have sort of enough resources to keep them secure. So perhaps interventions to improve school safety, make the school a site of safety for the community, a place where young people can grow up in cases where they might be safe from external hindrances, some of the social ills that are very prevalent throughout South African society. If schools are a safe place for this, that could likely decrease dropout rates. If teachers are safe places for learners to be, that could improve situations. If schools are, I think the education system is in need of investment for psychosocial support, and this is an intervention that's likely to have outcomes beyond just the improvement of individual psychosocial health, but it could help with the societal outcomes as well. Better safety, more cohesive environment, better education outcomes, we would like to hope. Onto the quality of education in the curriculum, is it suitable for employment? I think there's parts that try to address this, and maybe things like the could be bolstered. Mentioned, school safety initiatives, but also the TVET College 3-stream model of education, if it's taken seriously, if it's implemented well, I think may have better employment outcomes. And then again, there's a range of interventions to improve quality across the basic education system, starting early, starting with ECD. We know there's the results of the PEARLS assessment, which is the International Reading Assessment. Learners in any language across South Africa, unfortunately, grade 4 learners of 2021, only 19%, so 81% of those learners could not read for meaning in any language. Serious interventions are needed there to improve reading outcomes, and that's likely to have better effects later down the line as well. I think the tracking and tracing of learners' development across the years. What are the reasons given for their for high dropout rates? I think learner pregnancies is also an important one, and so interventions. I know the Department of Basic Education does have some policy in place, and these need to be implemented and tracked, and the efficacy of which it would be useful to prevent learner dropouts, and also to prevent early learner pregnancies. We know many of these are the result of gender-based violence, of rape, and this is a serious plague of our community. Interventions here at the schooling level, again, very much interrelated with various Model T, with various aspects of the rest of society. On sanitation, I think I'd also like to just highlight that, the schools without water and without sustainable access to water, it's related to the climate change catastrophe that is impending, and that is in many ways arrived. We've seen increased floods affecting schools, and increased droughts, increased flooding, extreme weather conditions. And so the government needs to seriously plan, looking at schools in particular, but across the infrastructure and building climate resilient infrastructure. We know often classrooms are provided are mobile classrooms, but these might not be conducive to learning, especially in conditions with extreme heat. Those classes, if you're in them, the ventilation is a lot worse. The conduction of heat is a lot worse. So they end up being really stuffy, and it's difficult for learners to concentrate. They're also more vulnerable to weather damage. And so, yes.
Without cutting you short, I'm going to request that you try and wrap up all the responses of members.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I think I'm almost done. Just last point that I wanted to make on SGPs. This is a central component for of the education system, and parents are meant to be, a site of democracy in the education system through SGBs. And then, of course, there are vast disparities between the efficacy and efficiencies of how school governance bodies work, and this may be partly explaining why we see differences in schools that are similarly located, but definitely also has a contribution to explaining education inequality. We know the former Model C schools, wealthy schools, parents who send their children there, they're much more likely to be well-educated lawyers, professionals, accountants, and able to really provide robust financial legal oversight and support to the school. While schools in that serve working class communities or indigent communities as well are less likely to have parents with those sorts of skills. So what's important, Equal Education does work with SGBs, tries to provide training, but I think it's incumbent on the state through the law to provide training to school governing bodies, and to make sure that this training is continuous, is robust. Unfortunately, no, for example, some provinces, SGB terms are 3 years, and they only provide training to the SGBs on financial management in the 3rd year of their term. So for 2 years, many parents, if they don't equip themselves before then the financial management at school level is vulnerable to mismanagement and to lots of leakages and inefficiencies. And so more effort needs to be made to ensure that the curriculum and the support given to school governing bodies, especially school governing bodies in working class communities, is adequate and helps the school be a site of vibrancy, of community safety, and of education and development. Thank you so much, comrades. Honorable members. Just the last comment on pit toilets. Yeah, we are very encouraged by the new administration's vibrancy in making sure that these get eradicated. We hope that this will be done soon, but unfortunately, this is one of several infrastructure backlogs. There's 75% of schools don't have computer labs, don't have libraries, and these are fundamental to a good quality education. So we would like to see those funded and those pursued as aggressively as well in the near future. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafi and Mr. Parks, for the responses. Is there any follow-up from members? Any follow-up from members or clarity-seeking questions? In the absence of that, let me extend my heartfelt gratitude to COSATU and Equal Education for your invaluable presentation and the meaning deliberations. Your sites, your contributions and recommendations will be very instrumental as we work towards finalizing the bill. We know the submission by members, and I would really like to appreciate their active participation and thoughtful engagement through this process. To the staff of the committee, your tireless efforts in ensuring the success of our meetings and public hearings, your behind-the-scene work is really appreciated, and also appreciate the public for showing interest in this appropriation process. Members, with all the presentations and the deliberations that have been put before this committee, I would really like to thank our invitees for making it time to come and engage with the committee. Truly, this committee will take note of all the submissions, as you heard that most of the issues that you raised are the issues of concern to members also. Your submissions will really be considered as we work towards the finalization of the appropriations bill. I would like to allow COSATU and any member that is not a member of this committee, COSATU, all the invitees, Equal Education, to can leave the platform so that we allow only members to have their announcements and to deal with any other issue that may arise from members before we close the meeting. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to meeting with you every now and then when we deal with issues of the committee. Thank you very much. You may leave the platform, COSATU and Equal Education. I see Mr. Rafi is still part of the meeting. Mr. Rafi, thank you very much. Honorable members, I am now going to give to Mr. Nodada to make the announcement and maybe deal with the issue that Honorable Ndlovu raised earlier on, because I think it's an issue that has been spoken about in the committee, and for this platform, honestly speaking, colleagues, COSATU and Equal Education could not respond to issues of virtual meeting. That is why I said to Honorable Ndlovu, this is an issue of the committee and the committee alone, because if we raise an issue of the virtual meeting, especially for these meetings, I will refer members to the message that was sent by Mr. Nodada on the 17th on Wednesday, where we requested a view from each and every member on how we're going to work about in attending this meeting. A suggestion was made by Mr. Nodada on how the meeting should proceed. Members were given an opportunity to make their submissions, whether they agree or they have an alternative way of dealing with this meeting. Only on Saturday, the 20th, I responded to say that because members could not make submissions on how the meeting will be held, and the suggestion by Honorable Nodada was a bit complicated for one to can understand on how the meeting will be ran, I recommended that the meeting be virtual. A notice was then sent to members on the 22nd, informing members that today's meeting was virtual, and only Honorable Ndlovu noted and agreed to the reminder that was coming from Mr. Lubabalu. So for me, it was not relevant to raise the issue of the meeting today be held virtual, whereas members had the whole week to engage on the virtual meetings. And also yesterday we had meetings of chairpersons of committees where the issues of why we have virtual meetings were raised. And maybe myself and Honorable Ndlovu from this committee are chairpersons, and we were part of that meeting. I did not want to raise our housekeeping issues with invitees to the meeting. That is why I saw it fit that we should wait for this time and deal with the issue of our virtual meetings on this platform. I can give to you now, Honorable Ndlovu.
Chair, I think for me, these are two separate issues. There is an issue of the public hearing and the issue of our committee meetings. So the issue of committee meetings, all of us, we know, and then we have agreed, and based on the advices to say there are no venues to have meetings. So public hearing, the COSATU was saying, they had a view of saying we need a public hearing because they want the community and including their members to show or to see the debate through and all the social medias. So in terms of the situation, what we were saying, we want a public hearing. We also want to go to the community on the ground and discuss with the community there, not on TV or on a virtual setup. So that is our view. The issue of the committee is something else, Chair. The committee meetings, we are agreed, there's no offices here, there's no venue to have that kind of a meeting. So let's not separate the two. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndlovu. I want to take you back, members, to when we adopted the draft program as our working document that Mr. Lubabalo Nodada indicated to members that this is the public hearing of today will be held on virtual based on the facts raised by himself of time constraints and the manner in which we need to deal with this bill. He further reiterated that we have until the 31st to adopt this bill. They will not have time to rotate the country and hold physical meetings. That's how we ended up agreeing to the program and agreeing that meetings will be virtual. That's when Honorable Siwisa raised an issue of virtual meetings. I then came back to say, we understand that meetings cannot be virtual, but based on issues that were raised by Honorable Nodada, we could not have our issues on virtual. And I even said this is a situation that is beyond our control. And we agreed to these situations. So it can't be that as the committee, we agree that these meetings and understanding the reasons behind these meetings being virtual at the level of the committee. And when we are in a public platform, we raise issues as if we never dealt with them as the committee. It is our interest as a committee that we must engage with members of the public. And fortunately for today, if we can look at the list of attendees, colleagues, there's Parliament TV. It means there's a possibility that this is a sitting that is published, this sitting is recorded, and there's a possibility that the sitting was live. Hence, you heard when I said, I appreciate the public for having an interest in being part of these processes. It is because I know this sitting is broadcasted. But having the views of public and everything, it is unfortunate. It's a matter that is beyond us. I'm going to leave it at that and request Mr. Nodada to give us the announcement, then we adjourn the meeting. Mr. Nodada.
Chairperson and honorable members, and good afternoon, honorable members. Chairperson, our next meeting, as per the notice that we sent, is this coming Friday, 26th of July at 10 o'clock. This meeting is an in-person meeting. The committee is going to consider the draft appropriation bill report, which is part of the process that the committee has been undertaking up to this far. Yeah, Chairperson, let me end it there, Chairperson. Thank you so much. Before Chair, just before Chair, I'm apologies, Chairperson, I'm sorry. We intend to circulate the draft report to members today, probably before end of business. Thank you, Chair.
That would be really appreciated, Mr. Nodada, that members of the committee receive the reports today to give themselves time to go through it this afternoon or this evening and tomorrow before we meet on Friday. This brings us to the end of our meetings, colleagues. As Honorable Swart.
Sorry, no, Chairperson. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I just agree with you what you just said. that we'd really like to, receive a report by end today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. This brings us to the end of our meeting until we meet again on Friday, physically in a designated room for our meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye.
Bye, my Chair.